Today we are going to have a little fun with yes, count them, 8.22 long rifle competition capable handguns here. Now, before we get started with a battle royale, which I think will be really fun, let's take a look individually at each one of these competitors. We're going to kind of go from what I consider the best to the worst, so to speak. But none of these are really terrible. A mass majority of these I've either used in competition before or I've had shooting sports kiddos that have used them. But starting out right here, the most expensive one we'll be using today, the Smith & Wesson Model 41. Now, this one right here is, in my opinion, the greatest semi-auto 22 long rifle uh, ever produced on the planet today. Yada, yada, yada. It's nice and heavy, heavy barrel. You've got that low bore axis going on, target style grip on this thing. Great trigger, adjustable target sights. Just you name it, it is ready to go pretty much right out of the box. It is ready to go and perfectly willing and capable. My pick, of course, for the number one seed or the number one spot. Next up here is one that is hard to even get on the screen. This right here, one of my Browning buck marks. I've used Browning buck marks, including this one, in competitions over the years. This is probably the best one out of the lot, so I thought, heck, we'll throw this one into the mix. It is obviously competition ready, tandemized to the hill. Got the Gideon Omega Dot. This is going to be the only one with an optic that we're going to be running today. And I expect it to do very well. Cost wise, by the time that you've got basically all of the competition whatnots on this beauty right here, this one probably runs really close to the value of that Smith & Wesson 41. Next, we've got sort of a dark horse, so to speak. This one can be a sleeper. This one is the high standard sharpshooter. You're probably familiar with the high standard Duramatic and the the HDs, the militaries, the Olympias, something like that. Very similar design to actually the Browning Buckmark. The way the barrel is mounted on this thing, and even the action. One thing that is different between this and the Browning Buckmark is where the slide is. The Browning Buckmark has a top strap, so it has a spot back here off the frame, and that attaches the frame to the barrel essentially at another contact point, whereas the sharpshooter does not. But the grip angle, really indicative of a little target pistol on this thing. The trigger's great, adjustable sights. It does have the old school heel release for the magazine, which is an interesting one on this, but you've got a nice heavy barrel. It's got some weight to it, just like that Smith & Wesson 41 does. And typically this one right here does very well. The only revolver in the mix today, we've got the Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson is going to be a thing today. Smith & Wesson 617, 10 shot uh, double action revolver here. And in single action, which is what we're going to be firing in today, it's single action. Very good trigger, decent trigger even in double action. Not the greatest in the sights, but does have the fiber optic front, which of course helps. And just like that Smith & Wesson 41, but in the revolver world, my opinion is that the 617 Smith & Wesson here is the greatest 22 long rifle revolver of all time, especially from accuracy standpoint, stuff like that. But this one, like the Smith & Wesson 41, can be a little bit pricey in that value area as well. Like the Browning Buckmark, this next one right here will barely fit on the screen as well. This one, a Ruger Mark II target. And this one, like the Buckmark, being competition ready. This one you can see is too, with the big huge grip. We've got the charge ring, got the adjustable sights, got the comp on the front, and this one right here is just absolutely beautiful and ready to go. Instead of being tandemized, though, this is pretty much all Volquartsen. And I expect this one to do pretty well as well. And like the previous ones we've seen, being of course Volquartsen competition ready. This one right here, value wise, is going to be a little bit up there as well. Now the previous five that we've looked at, I would consider our serious contenders for the day, but we've got three more, starting with the Smith and Wesson 422 right here. This the 422 Target, and it's not a whole lot that's fancy like that 41. It does have like a unique action with a um, low bore axis. This is more of a what am I thinking, an alloy style frame, so it really doesn't have the weight of the 41. But this one right here, despite its simplistic look in the past, has done pretty decent in some competitions before. It is definitely nothing to sneeze at, and so it is in the mix today. We're going to see what it will do. Now we start getting to kind of the bottom of the barrel, so to speak. Not that these are horrible. This, the Smith& Wesson 22A. You can see this thing got some characteristics of that 41. Got some characteristics of even the buck mark on this thing. This one right here, I don't even know what to say. It's got the big long rail there on the top, but I've never seen anybody run optics on these. And we're not going to go. We're not going to do that today. Now this one right here, it's again, it can hang. It's done decent in competition, but of all the Smith and Wessons, obviously it is the least impressive. Also, value wise, it is also the lowest value too. This one and the next one, I would say enter into almost, when you can find them, that budget range as far as target capable 22s go. And then rounding things off, we've got one right here, I think, direct from the planet Uranus. Uh, but no, this is the Beretta Neos right here. And it's really interesting. Here's the mag release on this thing. How cool is that? It's right there above the trigger guard on the right hand side. If you were left handed, you would just be out of luck with this one. But one of the cool things about this, I don't know that I've ever been a fan of the design. This right here, value wise, in line with that 22A from Smith and Wesson, I think. They do make a carbine conversion stock kit for these. Beretta did back in the day. They're super expensive now. Man, I wish I could find one because that would be cool. But these right here, this one, I picked this one up because the grip is kind of thin in this area. It's got a really interesting, one of the deepest cuts I've ever seen in a grip back here. It feels good, and it's a small grip. And so for the shooting sports kiddos and stuff, this one has always worked out really, really well, even though it's not the greatest performer typically, as far as a training tool, and a training tool when you're training and for competition and things like that, especially works out really, really well. So yeah, our final competitor here, the Beretta Neos. Well, let's talk ammo real quick because today for our little competition, we're going to be running this right here, Federal Auto Match. This a 40 grain lead nose, something that I have ran for years as far as my practice ammunition goes. And there's a reason that I practice with this. It's not the greatest stuff, of course, but value wise for what you get. The reason I say that is for actual competition, I would go with the Ely right here, black box match. I've got tons of this right here, all the same lot number that I've shot in matches over the years. And of course, a lot of my shooting sports kiddos have shot it as well. This is my go to. However, you can pick up the 325 rounds of the Federal Auto Match for roughly about the same price. You could get 50 rounds of the Ely. So, we're not going to waste expensive ammunition for this little thing. Again, this is sort of my practice ammo. You can tell, though, that this is, I've got a ton of this. It's all the same lot number, but you could tell just by the branding, this is an older box because I stocked up a very long time ago. What you see today from this ammo may or may not be the same with some of the current stuff. So, just keep that in mind. Now, if you have any thoughts about those contenders, be sure and drop that in a comment below. Before we get to the battle royale here, we need to talk a little bit about course of fire. Okay. We're going to be shooting 25 yards at some little 3-inch shoot and see style sticker targets. And we're going to be using the multi-cal steady rest here. That's what we're going to be shooting off of. Now, you're going to want to keep in mind that in a precision bullseye competition style match, you're going to have to shoot that standing and one-handed, okay? So the groups that you're going to be seeing today, I can guarantee you the groups that you're going to be seeing today from this rest are going to be way tighter, way smaller groups than probably, I'm not going to say probably, definitely what bigger than the majority of people out there. There's going to be some world-class Olympians and other things that could probably do it, but the vast majority of people are not going to get these types of groups. However, that's a good thing because that gives us an idea of what these handguns are actually capable of. And then we know that everything else is just going to be on us. So I do want to get some ear pro on. Obviously got the eye pro from Hunter's HD Gold ear pro here. Bluetooth rechargeable from Pro here. And anything that you see on the video, as always, at least if we're able to, is linked up in a pinned comment below. All right, round one, Smith & Wesson 617. Here we go. Now, let's do some Browning buck mark. First matchup here, we have the Smith & Wesson 617 on the left. We've got the buck mark on the right. And here's the reason I told you that 617 best 22 LR revolver ever is because even with it not having the longer, heavier fluted barrel of the buck mark, even with it not having optics, man, if it didn't have that little gap in it, the grouping would be very, very similar there. But since we do got a split group with the 617, got to give it to the buck mark. So buck mark will move on. Smith & Wesson 422. A little Ruger Mark II target now. Second matchup here with the 422 on the left, the Ruger Mark II on the right. And for that little 422, you can see 25 yards. Respectable, decent group. But when it comes to the group with the Mark II, well, the 422 just didn't quite get it done. That group on the Mark II, obviously a little better, so the Mark II moves on. Smith & Wesson 22A. All right, a little sharpshooter action here. All right, third matchup here, 422 Smith & Wesson on the left, sharpshooter on the right. This may be the first heartbreak of our little competition, because I would say this one right here on the 422 was a flyer. So aside from that flyer, though, if you look, I think even if we're talking about the core of the group, core of that group a little bit larger, I think, than the sharpshooter anyway. Doesn't surprise me, because the sharpshooter here is definitely a sleeper when it comes to accuracy. And either way, if you're in a competition, you get a flyer, you don't get a do-over. So either way with that, the sharpshooter moves on. Beretta Neos on deck now. All right, Smith and Wesson, model 41. Here we go. Final matchup of this first round. We've got the Neos on the left, little bit of space you can see in that group. And then we've got the GOAT, the OG 41 on the right. And that is an all-touching group right there. So I think because of that, now really respectable that the Neos got as close of a group as it did to that 41. So got to give credit there. Ultimately, though, the 41 going to move on. By the way, if you want to check out these sticky targets, they are linked in a pinned comment below. Round two kicking off with the Browning Buckmark. Mark II again. Let's do this. All right. First matchup of the second round. Buckmark on the left, Mark II on the right. And that, my friends, is a nasty, wicked one-hole group put up by the Buckmark. Now, maybe some controversy here, because you may say, hey, you're running a red dot over there. And that's true. But remember that at distance, the point at which that round hits in the in that dot is going to be a wider area. And so out here at 25 yards, I don't know what that area is, but it's really important if you're running a dot and you're talking about precision, that you sight in and you get that point of impact as dead center in that dot as you can get. And then you can put the dot, per se, in this outer ring or over the entire target, center it up well, and then that's what you can get. But not a bad showing at all from the Mark II. Really good showing, but it's pretty obvious the Buckmark moves on. Little sharpshooter action one more time. Second go with the Model 41. Final matchup of round two. We've got the sleeper sharpshooter on the left. We've got the GOAT 41 on the right. And, like we've seen over and over, respectable group from the sharpshooter, but the OG there, I think, takes it as far as the smallest group. The 41 will move on, and looks like we've got in the final the Buckmark versus the 41. Final round with the Browning Buckmark. All right, final run. Smith & Wesson 41. Here we go. Final matchup here for all of the marbles. The Buckmark on the left, the 41 on the right. And with both of these, I don't know if it was shooter fatigue or what. Those groups opened up, I think, on both of these are capable of better groups. Very similar, very close, but if we go by the rulings that we've done previously, we're touching with the Buckmark. We got a little bit of gap here on the 41, so the GOAT may have to take the L on this one. We may have to give it to the Browning Buckmark. Now, that's with an asterisk a little bit because, again, controversy is that Buckmark is running the optic, so maybe the optic does make a little bit of difference. So now it's time to jump down in those comments below. Let me know which one of these little 22 handguns were your favorite, regardless of how it did in the Battle Royale. Speaking of how these things did in the Battle Royale, I was a little bit surprised that the Browning Buckmark come out on top. You would think that it would be obvious with the optic that would do it, but I'm here to tell you, if that wasn't such a phenomenal handgun to start with, the optic really wouldn't be that big of an advantage. And I do have that optic dialed in pretty doggone tight, pretty centered as far as the point of impact being very central, right, to the size of that dot. But speaking of, all the other ones, what we've seen on these targets is we've seen some of the more budget-minded target 22s do pretty darn decent, at least here from the rest, do pretty darn decent up against some pretty high value 22 target handguns. And so what that speaks to, I think, is that you can do pretty well even with those budget-minded options. It's just when you bump up in value, I think it allows you a little more margin maybe for human error, because you got to keep in mind if you're shooting these matches and you're shooting them standing, I should say, and one-handed, then that's going to be a lot more difficult than trying to do it from something like this multi-cal steady rest.